We have a top 100 mailbag episode here, as we always do after the update. We want to answer your questions mostly from Discord, but also from X and Instagram as well. Of course, you got me, Arm Layton. He's Jack McMullen. And before we get to a couple of the mailbag, or all the mailbag questions, though, Jack, we got two big time debuts. I realized we didn't even get a chance to talk about Roman Anthony getting the call. Yeah. I'm just so happy that the number one prospect is up. But at the same time, the fact that it required an injury is frustrating. And then Jacob Misiorowski's first career start at the big league level was disgusting.
And how about Christian Moore, too? I petition to push the 3 in-depth conversations about Roman, Moore, and Misiorowski back to early next week so we can really give it the shine that it deserves, because I watched every pitch of Misiorowski's major league debut. And as somebody that admittedly checks in on Misiorowski every week and has been doing so for the last 2 years because I'm fascinated by him and I feel like he, without a doubt, had the best stuff in minor league baseball. I didn't think it was close with the 80 grade fastball, with the 80 grade slider that I think everybody saw, with the changeup that StatCast has no idea how to tag. I checked in on him every week and I was still blown away by what he did in his major league debut. It was ludicrous to watch. And having Brian Anderson kind of just talk through it was hilarious, because it's all these people are experiencing it for the first time. I've got a whole bunch of more thoughts, but I petition to push this conversation back to
No doubt. I just felt like we had to acknowledge it, and we will break, I think, all of those down. We'll have some games of Christian Moore to deal with. Not a ton to talk about with Roman Anthony just yet. We've talked about him so many times, so him getting caught up to the big leagues, it's okay, well, let's see what things look like in the big leagues. It's only been a few games, so we will check back in on those guys. But I do want to do an in-depth breakdown of the Misiorowski start, which we'll do early next week, because the cutter, that there's a slider, but some of them are actually moving like cutters. That's a really fascinating conversation I want to get into. I want to talk about just the fastball and what it was doing, and the entire arsenal, honestly. So it was so fun to watch, and the command was there. And then, a few more games to talk about what's going on with Roman. But this top 100 this mailbag is top 100 geared. So all the questions are really going to be focused on that. And again, thank you so much to everybody who asked them, because we have a lot of really awesome questions.
Yeah, no, man, they're awesome, and we'll get into them in a moment. I will say, just because I need to say something about it, we started this conversation on the Just Baseball show yesterday, which aired on Friday morning. Aaron Savali requested a trade, which was flat out hilarious, and the trade was even funnier.
Yes,
this worked out better than I could have ever imagined. Aaron Savali requests a trade. Okay, Bubba, go to the White Sox for Andrew Vaughn. It's unbelievable how that worked out.
It's amazing. And hey, you've got Anthony Segler. You start figuring it out offensively. He's been awesome. He's going to get called up. He's been awesome in AAA. Maybe Breton and Co can get Andrew Vaughn right offensively.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy. But we'll get into this mailbag here. And we start with our Discord questions. We've got 4 Discord questions. Then we got 3 questions from X and a question from Instagram as well. Question number 1 comes from our guy Sean on Discord. Who are some prospects that moved up a future value tier? Aram mentioned Carson Benj is one. More importantly, and I think this is the question that I really want you to go on, in this exercise, what does moving a future value tier mean to you? How do you think about 50-plus future value guys as opposed to a 55 future value guys? I feel like that is, for me at least, the most abstract number on the top 100. I understand hit tool grades and all the tool grades, but future value is one that I don't really understand. I understand that a 65 future value is reserved for the top 5 prospects in baseball, or maybe even just one guy. Yeah. And then you go to 60, and then you go to 55, and chances are the bottom of the top 100 is going to be 50 future value guys. What does it mean?
Yeah, it is honestly one of the things that I juggle with a little bit too, because, you could look at it through the lens of you could assign a future value grade on their most likely outcome. Some do it more on just kind of their value and the perceived value. I think, Baseball America, you could look at how they do it, and I think it's more geared towards what their 75th percentile outcome would be. At least that's how I interpret it. For me, I try to kind of use it as a balance of the floor and the ceiling, and put a value on them. And it really is hard. It really is the most abstract part of it. And that's why I like to just put more detailed write-ups. At the end of the day, I look at it more as a tier system where a 55, future value prospect is just to make it clear that he is a tier more valuable than the 50 plus guy. But then for the 50 plus, it's like that's a player that's a little bit ahead or just too good to be that 50, which is a lot more common across. I mean, there's several prospects that were, 50 future value that didn't make the list, but still not quite on that level to be at the 55, because those are the players where I think the 55 future value guys, those are guys where I feel pretty confident the 75th percentile outcome is a potentially comfortably above average regular. Whereas, I think the guys that are 50 plus, it's more of an uphill battle to get to that above average, well above average regular, but there's a great chance at them being, an average regular at the big league level. And I think so that's really, especially as it pertains to the top 100, I think it's a ceiling conversation because every player in the top 100 is going to have a good chance of being a big league regular. That's why they're in the top 100. But to get to that next tier, it's elevating the ceiling. And when I look at a Carson Bench in that situation, I liked Bench as the number 100 prospect for us going into the year because the floor was so high, right? You're talking about a guy that could stick in center, good field to hit, decent athlete, hits the ball hard enough, and has a good approach that you're like, okay, he's going to be a sum of his parts guy and be a solid regular in the outfield. But then this year he starts hitting the ball really hard. You start to see the power shine through. He's doing it at high A, but that 90th percentile is at 106, and I'm like, okay, well now you're dreaming on a little bit more in terms of the impact and the ceiling. So that was enough to push him up to the next future value tier. So I would say as it pertains to the top 100, it's generally going to be that ceiling being higher. And then, for non-top 100 guys to push them from like a 40 plus to a 45 or 45 to a 50, that's where I do think it's a little bit more of both, but the floor is a little bit more of the part of the conversation because, like a reliever that you feel good about at least, or a starter you feel good about his chances of at least being a reliever or stuff like that.
Got it. Okay. So it really is just kind of I like how you said it's more of a tier system than anything, where you just think, okay, where is the cutoff from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 to tier 4 within the top 100? And same can be said about, team rankings, right? You've got, maybe a cutoff between the number 1 guy and the number 2 guy, and then 2 to 4, 2 to 6 are clumped, and then there's a big drop off between 6 and 7. That's where you'll see that clump kind of cut off and a different future value tier assigned to it.
Exactly. Because you're comparing a lot of times, apples to oranges too. And like, there's going to be certain players like in the 50 plus future value tier that are maybe a little bit higher ceiling, lower floor than other players in the 50 plus future value tier who have a decent chance to maybe be an above average regular, but not nearly as high of a ceiling, but the floor is higher, right? So I look at like a Kyle Teal who you're comparing to, I'd even look at like a Johnny Farmelo or an Eduardo Tait, who are both in the 50 plus future value tier, but I think their top end outcomes and their 30th percentile outcomes look very different.
More separated. Yeah, than a Kyle Teal, where you know what you're looking at with a 30th percentile outcome, and you also know what you're looking at with a 75th percentile outcome.
But the value is kind of the same because you'll roll the dice for the upside sometimes too.
Got you. All right, next question also comes to us from Discord, and this one from SMH. This may have been addressed before, but how much does position play into a player's top 100 ranking? Just position defensively. Does it matter?
It depends on the player and their archetype, right? But of course it matters because we talk about, it kind of being, we think about it from a WAR perspective, right? Like how much WAR are these guys going to accumulate in their 6 years of control? And if you're a first baseman, like the offensive barrier to becoming a regular is so much higher, right? So like you're going to need to absolutely mash. Like, look at Xavier Isaac as a first baseman. Like that guy needs to be showcasing some of the best raw power in the minor leagues to offset the whiff and just to offset the lack of positional value there. Same with Lazaro Montes, right? He needs to rake. And even as he's raking, he's not a top 40 guy just yet because he's gonna need to mash to get to 3+ WAR. So it definitely matters. But like I look at some other players, and just because they're listed as shortstop doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get an edge. They have to be solid defenders, right? Like if it's a guy that may move off the position, I'm not just going to put him ahead because he's technically still a shortstop. But it matters a lot. Like when you look at the defensive ability, like a Carson Williams, right? His hit tool is a major concern. And if he was a first baseman, I don't know if he's even on the top 100 list. But because he is so good defensively at shortstop, you can palate the lack of hit at this point and have a little bit more patience there. So I would say it's pretty darn important. But at the same time, there's guys that can transcend that because they just rake. I think the Samuel Basallo is a perfect example of that, right?
Sure.
A teenager who just turned 20 who just destroys baseballs where I don't really care if he's a catcher or not because the offensive upside is so high, but it has to be that high to offset, the positional side of things. So it definitely matters.
The only thing that I'll kind of add to this is, like reminder on the genesis of what these rankings are for. It's for WAR accumulation. Who are you betting on to accumulate the most WAR in their major league career? And how do you accumulate WAR? You accumulate WAR by playing good defense at a premium position. Like, not all defensive WAR is created equal. Defensive WAR at first base is not the same as defensive WAR at shortstop, is not the same as defensive WAR in center field, and center is going to be valued more than left field. Like, that's just simply put how it's going to be. And I even look at like Peter's top 100 players, like Kyle Schwarber. We were making fun of him for being like top 50, and Schwarber is borderline a top 15 hitter in Major League Baseball right now, but he doesn't play defense.
No.
You got to remember that. And when you look at the WAR leaderboards, the best hitters in baseball, if they're designated hitters not named Shohei Ohtani, they're going to be outside the top 40 on these WAR leaderboards because they're just not playing defense. So, of course, it matters because this is a WAR-based top 100.
100%. And I think it's a great point because, something that I noticed a little bit more at this list is like, some people in the fantasy world, like I think that was where there was most pushback in terms of, hey, I thought a great list with really kind interactions, but like these are the players that, I was surprised to see so high. And I noticed a theme of that. It was generally, people in the fantasy realm
that factor into fantasy baseball.
Exactly. So it was like the Cooper Ingles and, like the Carson Williamses and like, because defense doesn't matter as much in fantasy baseball. And like, that's not necessarily how we're looking at this list. And that's why like a Joe Mack, another one where like, I think some people that are more fantasy focused are like, don't totally see it. But a Joe Mack and a Cooper Ingle, and Joe Mack's a better defender, but Cooper Ingle is probably a more well-rounded hitter at this point.
Yeah.
Those guys are top 60-ish prospects because, again, the offensive barrier is so low. Joe Mack could be a 95 WRC plus guy,
and
awesome. He's ripping 3+ WAR, no problem. And he also has the power he could hit 220 and he could be it's that Cal Raleigh light. And I hate saying it now. We can't say that anymore now because Cal Raleigh's Barry Bonds.
I mean, we can go back to the OG comp, Mike Zunino. Like, it could be Mike Zunino and it can work.
It can work. It just do it longer than Zunino, right? And you assume that he would. But like, Zunino had 4 WAR seasons. So that's the thing that I think makes it really interesting and definitely makes the defensive side of things important.
Yep. All right. Next Discord question comes to us about Luis Pena, and this one is from Durf. Nice name, Durf. What makes you confident a high riser like Pena being worthy of a top 15 spot, but not someone like Griffin or Rayner? Luis Pena into the top 15, not Connor Griffin or Bryce Rayner.
It's a great question because, like, Pena with the Brewers is, I mean, you look at what he's doing in low A, and then you look at what Connor Griffin is doing in low A, and then Bryce Rayner before the injury, unfortunately, that ended his season, dislocating that shoulder. They're all putting up great numbers, right? But the real like clear difference for me is the hit tool. And you can also point towards the age, and I know they're all young, but Luis Pena is 18 years old. I think you can make the argument, with Connor Griffin being so solid defensively at both shortstop and center, that you can make that war bet and conversation there as well. But both Bryce Rayner and Connor Griffin have some hit tool concerns. I think Griffin has done a good job of quieting that some, but Luis Pena has a chance to be, 60 hit and 55 power and 60 speed. And so it really is the hit tool being the differentiator. Because again, you have two guys that have a little bit of hit tool concern in Griffin and Rayner, and then you have a Pena who is excelled bat to ball wise at the DSL, is continuing to do so this year, and then now has this uptick in power. That's the gap, right? Rayner and Griffin have plus power. but Pena now looks like he could be close to plus power. So closing that gap and then already having the advanced feel to hit is where he separates a little bit from me. I think you could see more defensive potential with Rayner and Griffin, but I'm kind of curious if you checked in on them a year ago, even. Again, they still would have been ahead of Pena probably defensively, but that gap wouldn't have been as large as well. Like Pena, we just saw the leap that he made from age 17 to 18. And now imagine what the leap could be from 18 to 19 when he's their age. So he has another year to get to where they're at, but also is ahead of them hit tool wise and has closed the power gap. That's enough for me to again, we're talking about balancing the floor and ceiling to give him the edge.
And at the end of the day is demolishing the same exact level. Like he's a year younger and he's doing the same exact thing results wise as those guys were doing. And Rayner is kind of the run to the litter in that case just because of the injury thing. But, Connor Griffin can probably create not a leapfrogging situation, but Connor Griffin can create more of an apples to apples situation if he dominates in high A. And so far, so good for Connor Griffin right now. So if he's a year older crushing in high A and Pena's crushing in low A for the entirety of the year, those guys are probably stacked by the end of the season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, you could absolutely see. I mean, if Griffin's raking in high A, he could end up becoming a top 5 prospect in baseball if the underlying looks, the way that it would be implied with raking in high A. My one concern was, the spin and him kind of struggling. Not struggling is probably the wrong word because he didn't really struggle with anything, but that being the one area where if you looked at the underlying, there's a bit more whiff against the sliders, stuff like that. Low A, you're not going to see a ton of good spin. If he's able to continue to hedge that at high A, that would make a lot of headway for him. But yeah, I think that's where you see that potentially shifting things. Because again, Rayner is basically 20 years old in a week, and I'm think Connor Griffin would be right around the same thing, maybe a little bit younger. I'm pulling up the birthday. Oh no, Connor Griffin, dude, is actually sneaky young for the class. Like that is the crazy part. He is 19, but he doesn't turn 20 until about, I would say, a month into next season. Wow. So you got about 7 months of a gap there. There's a strong case on that front. But again, I think the hit tool having another almost year, still 6-7 months of being younger is going to give a little bit of that edge to Pena. But again, Griffin, if he continues to show that he can hit these sliders and pitch recognition wise, show that he can handle it, that's going to be the thing to monitor. But again, there is some underlying whiff on those pitch types that I'm interested to see at the high A level.
Got you. Last Discord question comes to us about the back end of the top 100 list. And this one is from Suave on Discord. Who is a current back end top 100 guy, 75 to 100, that will be a top 25 guy a year from now? I thought this was a really interesting question because I scrolled 75 to 100 and I did not have a slam dunk answer.
No, there's not one. I think the easy, just like pick the high ceiling guy answer could have been like a Braylor Guerrero. He's
pick really the youngest one.
Yeah, he's really struggling right now over the last month. But his teammate might be the answer, honestly. Theo Gillen. First round pick by the Rays. We just put out, or we're about to put out our first Just Baseball Originals, where we're doing kind of medium form content, and you can subscribe to that channel on YouTube. We're breaking down. The first video I'm doing there was just basically hitting prospects you should be paying attention to, and Theo Gillen was one of them because out of the draft, easy guy to like. You look at the swing, you look at the speed, you see everything there. He's 6'3", 200. It was very easy to see why that guy was considered one of the more exciting prep prospects in the class. But the reason why he was kind of in a separate tier from the Griffin and the Rayners of the world was he had a lot of injuries, man. He had a lot of pretty serious injuries as an amateur, and he didn't have a clear-cut position. He was an infielder as an amateur, but now, the second the Rays drafted him, said, "Hey, we're throwing you in center field," and he's still learning his way out there, but with his feel for the game, I have a feeling, and his just plus speed, I have a feeling he's going to get pretty good in center field as he gets more time. But it's the offensive ability that stands out to me. In low A so far this year, he is an 870 OPS, but he's chasing at a 14% clip. He's just so comfortable in the box already. The contact rates are above average, and the exit velocities are plus. He's a 47% hard hit rate. It is a silky smooth swing from the left side as well. He's stealing bags. I think he's pushing 20 bags already. But when you combine the approach, the feel to hit from the left side, and then already tapping into what is plus raw power, I mean, he's popping 112s too. He's still 19 years old. He's younger than Bryce Rayner. And the other side of it is, I think there's a little bit of room for more, right? He's 6'3", 200, but it's kind of, it doesn't look like it. He looks like he's 6'3", 185. So I don't even think he needs to add more strength necessarily, because I think the speed's a big part of his game. But I think just naturally he's going to get more impactful with his swing as he matures. And he's already flashing good EVs. So I think this is a player that could do a lot of things across the board. And if the defense comes along in center field, wouldn't shock me if he's a top 25 guy.
I like the pitch. The only other name that I want to throw your way, just because he was a huge ticket IFA signing and he's so young in his baseball maturation, is Felnine Celestin with the Mariners. Like, that's another guy that I know you saw as a possible future top 25 prospect in baseball. It hasn't been awesome in low A yet this year, but he's only 19 years old. And again, he was signed for $4.7 million on the IFA front, and he was awesome at the complex. Like, this guy, if he sucked out of the gate, I probably wouldn't be saying this, but he was so good out of the gate. His OPS was a point under 1,000 at the complex last year as an 18-year-old in his first taste of professional baseball. He's been dealing with a variety of injuries over the course of his career so far. And this year he's been healthy, but he just hasn't been awesome in low A. But again, he's 19 years old. So that's the other one that jumped out to me. But aside from that, it's tough because everybody else is going to probably get to the big leagues before they can boost their stock to top 25 range.
And that's why we're talking about the future value tier guy. It's mostly guys in that range that are higher floor. So it's difficult. Celestin would have been my pick probably before the season started. It has been quite disappointing. The impact has just been gone, because you mentioned he was so impressive last year. He was hitting the ball hard. And for whatever reason, I don't know if he's dealing with an injury, playing through something, whatever it may be. But I mean, the impact is just dissipated. He is a 29% hard hit rate. He's slugging 365, and the defense has been rough at short. So, but still, he's a strong candidate because of the tools. He's a switch hitter. We've seen him flash some really exciting stuff. So I think, and he'll have the time to get there. So he probably is as good of a candidate as there is in this back end range. It's just he's lost some of that helium with the slow start to the season.
Gotcha. Real quick, a quick question from X, and it has to do with the Cardinal Catchers. This one comes to us from Jay Budlovic on X. The Cardinals have a pair of minor league catchers in Leonardo Bernal and Raynel Rodriguez that are having really good seasons. How far off the top 100 are they? Could they be there on the next update, or what is holding them off? Bernal is an interesting one because he's been around for a while. Raynel Rodriguez was the best hitter in the DSL last year, if I'm not mistaken, and he's doing more of the same this year.
Yeah, Rodriguez is crushing, and I see people getting very excited about him, and I totally understand why. But at the same time, he doesn't really have a position long term. Like, I think it's very, very likely that he moves off of shortstop, or moves off of catcher, excuse me. And that's the concern for me, is like, if he's not catching, he's got to, again, back to the other conversation, he has to really mash. That said, he's 18 and he's kind of mashing right now in low A. And I mean, he said the last few games, he said a bit of a wall, but he got off to a hot start. He was lighting up the Florida Complex League from an exit velocity perspective. But, you know, this is another one where, again, I think people in the fantasy world very excited about him, super deep leagues, picking him up. I totally get that because of the upside, right? He has 8 home runs through 25 games between the complex and low A. But there's some swing and miss there. And, you know, I think without potentially being able to stick a catcher, it's still a little bit more of an uphill battle for him, I think, to be in the top 100 conversation. I just think he's going to need to show some more results over a span in low A, but he's also so young for the level. Very, very exciting prospect regardless. Leonardo Bernal is honestly close, and I think that's a guy that you could make the case just could have a strong enough resume at this point and make enough improvements this year at the upper minors as a switch hitting catcher who's a good defender that you just say, hey, like, he may never be a star, but the floor is so solidly high that this is a guy that should be on the back end of the top 100 list. So I would say Bernal is pretty close, especially because this year he is adding more impact. He has 10 home runs
He
through
had 10
43
homers.
games.
110 games last year between high A and double A, 11 homers. This year in 43 games, 10 homers.
An issue for him in the past was elevating. Like he was putting the ball on the ground too much, and this year he is elevating a lot more. He's cut that ground ball rate by I think 7-8%. The EVs are slightly up. He's demolishing balls from the right side. That's the one thing. 6 of his 10 home runs have come from the right side, despite the fact that it's a third of his at bats. So you definitely want to see the left side pick it up a little bit, but he still has an 808 OPS from the left side. So as a switch hitting catcher that's now getting into more power, and again, the defense is there, and he's still kind of a prospect fatigue guy, sneaky, only 21 years old. So I think he's a guy that could easily be on the top 100 update, the next one that'll probably come in the mid-season. But he'll also have to fend off some draft guys and everything. But it is important to note that he's just 21 years old. He struggled badly with in-zone whiff on secondaries last year, and he has drastically improved that this year. So that's another really encouraging aspect. Again, I think he very easily could be on the next update.
Love it. All right, we're going to get to the rest of your social media submitted questions in a moment. Before that, quick break.
Change in day, change in locale for me, and slight change in locale for you, too. You're facing the other way. But
facing the other way now, and I changed my clothing.
That's okay. Yeah, I changed my clothing as well, and no, I guess I'm technically in a different city because I was in Maryland and now I'm in DC. So that's what we got going right now.
That counts. For people listening on audio have no idea what we're talking about. We had to split this episode into two. So for those on YouTube, I think they'd probably see a very clear jump cut that would have got us in trouble in journalism school. This would be the most dramatic jump cut in the history of jump cuts. But we're ready to go with question 6. What is it, 6? Yeah.
C's get degrees, baby, and we're continuing our X and Instagram questions. This one comes to us from AB Blover underscore on X or AB Lover underscore on X.
Lover. I hope it's not Antonio Brown, given the recent news.
It's not. I don't think so. I think we're in the clear there. I hope his last name is like Blover or something like that. But this question, good one. Based on only their 90th percentile outcomes, who are the top 3 out of Connor Griffin, Luis Pena, Jesus Mate, Leo DeVries, and Zaire Hope? These are all of Arm's prospect crushes, and I would love to hear you pick 3 based on the ceilings.
Even with the extra day to think about this, it has not made it any easier. I mean, Connor Griffin, ceiling-wise, is got to be right there. I think I would say off the bat, it's tough because if we're talking about it from like a WAR perspective, right? Like Zaire Hope, he's offensively, I think the upside is as immense as anybody on this list, but he's probably not gonna stick in center field. He may not be the best defender in the world in the outfield. So okay, how does he accumulate WAR? He's gonna need to absolutely mash and play a decent defense. I think with Connor Griffin, the 90th percentile outcome, that means the hit tool is at least fringy, and he's elite defensively, and he's flashing, plus power, at least comfortably plus. He's going to rack up WAR at shortstop or center field. So I think that's an obvious like top end outcome. But then I compare like the higher offensive ceiling guys to like a Leo DeVries, who he does everything across the board really well. I struggle to conceptualize what his ceiling is, though, right? Like the reason why he is so highly regarded for us is because at 18 years old, he's already doing what he's doing as a switch hitting shortstop. And you can tell that there's all-star upside there, but like how high can that ceiling go? I don't know, because the raw EVs aren't totally there yet compared to the other guys on this list. But he's at the most challenging level of anybody on this list, and he's as young as anybody on this list. So that's where it becomes really difficult for me to compare. But I would say I would probably lean towards the ceiling of Griffin off the bat. Okay. I think the power hit speed combo of Luis Pena has to put him in that conversation as well. And like we just talked about, like Pena is ranked ahead of those guys for a reason, because I think he has that kind of combination across the board. Made's an interesting one because I think he's another guy, elite bat speed ahead of his years, things like that. But is he is it MVP you're dreaming on, or is it more of like the Ketel Marte ceiling, which isn't far off, but like that's another one where it's like how much more can you dream on in terms of how insane the production can get for a guy that's not the biggest in the world. He may not stick it short. Like those are the things I'm trying to split here hair wise. Where do you lean outside of I'm comfortable with Griffin and Pena?
I wasn't even comfortable with Pena because I don't know enough about Luis Pena, to be honest. So, like, I just know that you love him and he's really young and he's showing, like, all these good tools across the board. So I'm not equipped with enough information to say that. Like, Connor Griffin, I know, is just tooled out beyond belief. I would assume the guy that can stick it short and be a really good all-around shortstop would be in there in DeVries. So that was, like, where I went second. And then, honestly, like, Hope could hit 45 homers.
That's the thing.
So that was my thing. That's where I went. Like, okay, he's not going to stick in center, but that probably to me means a good right. I would take a good right fielder that can hit 40 to 45 homers in a 90th percentile outcome.
Yeah, because the thing is with him, if you're talking about like just value out there, even if the outs above average is fringy, he's got a 70 arm, or at least close to it. Zaire Hope does. So. Like he's gonna throw guys out and accumulate the defensive run save that way. The other thing that's interesting with Hope is he hits the ball harder in the air than anybody else. Like he's consistently hitting the ball in the air and consistently hitting it hard. It's a 33% ground ball rate and it's 109.5 mile per hour 90th percentile exit velocity. So like in terms of EVs, if you just had like kind of a scatter plot, right? EVs and just air rate. He's going to be in the top right corner. So that ceiling wise, when you're talking about the power, like I think he has the highest game power ceiling of anybody on this list. I think Connor Griffin has the highest WAR ceiling of anybody on this list. But then if you're comparing, what Pena can do bat to ball wise and Mate can do bat to ball wise, I think those guys both have the highest contact ceiling on this list. And I think DeVries is probably the most well-rounded besides a Griffin potential, but like I think the most well-rounded across the board on this list. So, I mean, just based on that.
I went WAR, power, and well-rounded. Like those are my big three because I feel like this game is continuing to trend in the way where power is close to everything.
Especially with Hope walking and doing what he's able to do. Again, this is a question. It's too good, honestly. It may change by week, but. I feel comfortable with Griffin, and then Pena and Mate are interchangeable, and those guys are going to kind of just keep. This is going to be the new conversation too. You talk about prospects that get ranked side by side, like that's going to happen for a long time now. They're going to move side by side up the ranks in terms of like low A, high A, so on, and I think they're going to be ranked next to each other as well. But I don't think it's crazy to say that by the end of this year, Luis Pena could be more highly regarded just because. Of what he is already doing this year, what he's flashing impact-wise. And the hit tool, as crazy as it sounds, like the hit tool at this present moment looks like it's a little bit ahead of a Jesus Mate, though he only has to hit from one side of the plate, which is worth noting. So my third, I'll go with the power ceiling of Zaire Hope as well. I think if he's hitting 40, like it's gonna elevate him over some of the guys that may have a little bit more defensive value.
Right, and playing at least an average right field.
Yeah.
Really? You think below average right field?
I'm nervous about it. Okay. I think he should play an average right field. I really do. But if it's a 90th percentile outcome, though, then he is playing an above average right field. So in that instance, yeah. But you know what? I leave the third one wide open. It's going to break my brain. So we'll crowdsource that one. But you went Hope?
I went Hope. Yeah. And honestly, I go Hope 2. I go Griffin a clear cut 1, Hope 2, DeVries 3.
I mean, I think that's the safest answer there.
Yeah, and I'm a safe guy. I'm kind of soft, and it's good.
But the thing is, with Pena and Mate, you could check in about 3-4 months, and it may not even be close, and they may be leading the group. So we should just check in on this question now every few months. Now, it'll be fun. But that was an awesome question.
I'll keep it in the notes app. Easier question here is in regards to Christian Moore, who just got his call up again. We're going to have a lengthier conversation about Christian Moore at the beginning of next week. But this one comes from @Colby Katzman on X. Why did Christian Moore drop off your top 100? Genuinely curious. Is it defense, slow start in Double-A, combination of things? Just want to know your outlook.
So, do you remember what my biggest concern was with Christian Moore coming out of the draft in terms of like what he'd be able to cover plate wise?
Wasn't it elevated gas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you listen to me sometimes.
I listen all the time. Don't give me that shit. I listen all the time.
Do you know what he's hitting against four-seam fastballs this year?
Not great.
186, 319, 220 against four-seam fastballs.
Nice.
In-zone contact rate of 67%. That's a big reason why. He has been very productive since he got to AAA. He has found a way to still be above average offensively between the two levels. I think AAA going nuts in the PCL really helped, salvage the slash line. But I think he showed a lot of positive things after the slow start in Double-A, and I think earned that promotion. But I do have concerns that against big league competition, he's going to really need to figure out how to get on plane for those elevated fastballs. I think there is some optimism since he's recognizing spin pretty well, and like the swing decisions have definitely improved. But I'm just worried that if you're struggling that much to cover four seamers, he's swinging and missing a lot at sliders as well. Like that's what you're going to see a lot of, man. You're going to see a lot of four seamers. You're going to see a lot of sliders at the highest level. And then the thing with him is he's got to really mash, to be the player that, I think people are hoping he can be as, a fringy defender at second base. So the defense did help, but like, it's not like that got worse or anything. I'd actually argue got a little bit better from what I was able to see, but I'm concerned he won't hit enough, and maybe he will. And he's still a guy that like was just outside the top 100, but for a college bat at Double-A after a full off season, I was hoping the end zone whiff, especially on fastballs, would be a little bit more palatable.
Gotcha. I will say it is interesting that Christian Moore's two first Major League Baseball games, he went 0 for 3 with a punch out against Charlie Morton, who is a spin machine, and Morton turned back the clock, 5 scoreless with 10 punch outs. That was nuts. His second Major League start will come against Tomoyuki Shigano. So he's got a bit of a soft landing right now, but unfortunately it just didn't go well against Charlie Morton.
He ran into the best Morton start in
in
multiple years. Definitely this season.
Not
I can
7.
guarantee that.
In 3 years, yeah, probably 3.
Gotta be. So I mean, we'll see. Yeah, the Shigano matchup will be interesting because again, those are guys that he should be hitting pretty well. What's interesting is, and this just I think makes it abundantly clear that it's a path thing. Yeah. Against sinkers this year. And like these aren't negligible sample sizes, right? We're talking about 355 four seamers.
2 months, yeah.
And 129 sinkers. Against sinkers, 419, 486, 710 slash line. He's 13 for 31 with 4 extra base hits and a pair of homers. And then against the four seamers, again, he's 11 for 59 with big whiff numbers. So to me, it's just a path that's very grooved for stuff at the lower part of the zone, sure. But again, they're going to know that real quickly at the big league level, and we'll see how he can adjust to that.
It's real tough because the back half of pretty much every Major League Baseball game, we're at tip your cap level because all these guys throw four seams at the top of the zone.
It's funny talking to guys now, and it was something I never really thought too much about. Of course, that all the relievers are disgusting, but that a lot of these guys, even though starters are great, feel the pressure of I need to get to the starter in the 2 maybe 3 at bats that I see him, because after that it's just pray. And of course it's an of course thing, but it's one of those things where you're thinking about it. You never fully put yourself in the shoes of a hitter. It's if you're having a tough stretch and you want to get going, or you just got up to the big leagues and you want to prove yourself, you got 2, maybe 3 shots at a starter who's still really freaking good because he's a starter at the big league level. And then if you don't do it there, you got to fight for your life against relievers. And for guys like Christian Moore, they really got to get to the starter.
North of 40% of your plate appearances are going to come against bullpen arms. That's really hard to wrap your brain around.
Why is batting average so low, Jack?
Because guys are going shorter than ever before, and if every single manager could run a bullpen game out every single day, they would, because all these guys are freaking nasty.
Yep.
That's exactly why. And they all throw good four-seamers at the top of the strike zone. Put on your Angels glasses for me real quick and just answer this yes or no question. Was now the right time for him?
No. Absolutely not.
Even with your Angels glasses on?
with the Angels glasses on, I mean, I guess like
Because I'm not asking you to think like a normal person. I'm
Okay.
asking you to think like an angel. Like I'm asking you to think like Perry. Is now the right time?
I'm glad they sent him to AAA, let him get hot, and then brought him up instead of doing like we're going to pull him straight from double where he was fighting for his life early in the year, and then now is putting some better ABs together. Like I am glad, like for on the Angels spectrum of things, this was patient for them. I think to give him some time in AAA again to get hot and then have some confidence there, and maybe some things improved. It's hard to tell when it's the PCL, of course, but I think some things must have improved there. It was for the Angels side of things closer to the right time, but
Gotcha.
I don't think I can ever fully get behind how insane they are with that side of things. Like if I see a guy with the underlying whiff that he has right now, I'm not putting him in a position to stifle his confidence and potentially start, unraveling even more at the big league level where those things are likely to get exploited.
And you're not alone on that. Two more questions here real quick. One last one on X and then one on Instagram to wrap us up. This last X question comes from Just Lions, our guy Alex. How far off was Jurrangelo Cjintje from the top 100?
It's funny if he hadn't gotten a little banged up, I think we probably could have seen him get closer. It's just like I wanted to see him kind of stretched out a little bit more and more consistent outings. And I don't know, it's been an interesting kind of process here where he's still at high A. I think there was a stretch of maybe 6 outings where he gave up a home run in a row. So like that was just something also to monitor. It was 6 consecutive outings where he gave up a home run. And then after that, they were kind of managing the workload a little bit more. He threw 30 pitches, last time out. And then it was like, or 40 pitches last time out and 30 pitches the time before that. So there was, I wanted to see a little bit more. And I wanted to see him just kind of build up innings wise. And I think evade the long ball a bit more. The most concerning part too, and the reason why he wasn't necessarily too close, 15% walk rate so far. And concerning is probably the wrong word. It's early for a double, a guy that throws with 2 arms.
Right.
So like it's going to be a little bit of a process there. But I continue to maintain I just don't get the point of him even throwing lefty. I really don't, and I think they should scrap it sooner rather than later. And I think that would help. But like I honestly think even worrying about throwing left-handed has held him back a little bit too.
Really? Do you think if he was throwing righty exclusive, he would be flirting with the top 100? I feel like the allure still gets him like near the top 100 though because he's doing both.
But it's almost like the Cags conversation where like it sounds cool in theory, but I feel like it's taking away from his development and it makes me just want to wait longer. Because like,
got it,
dude, as a lefty so far this year, opponents are hitting 304 with a 1242 OPS. He has a 41% strike rate throwing with his left hand. And then with his right arm, 159 opponents are hitting, and he has a 66% strike rate. I mean, it's amazing that they can try. Like he can try and he can do it, and he can throw 92 with his left arm. But like, this is a guy that I understand that he was naturally a lefty. At this point, he just clearly the right arm is now his natural side. I don't
right.
He looks like a guy that's not throwing with his natural arm. Like so. It's just if it's a 36% strike rate on a fastball, like why are we bothering? I mean, he has 15 walks in 39 plate appearances throwing with his left hand.
Wow.
So those are the things. It's like, how do I properly assess this guy? Because I don't know if they're going to continue to do it. Cjintje, just the right-hander, is pretty close to a I think a top 100 guy, and I just kind of want to see that and be able to assess him that way because again, it was a 70% strike rate on the fastball, but the fastball usage is really high. It's a 67% fastball usage with that right arm. So I'd say he's still a little bit off. The intrigue makes him still, a top 150 prospect or whatever it may be, but it's just kind of this weird wait and see of like, I just want to understand a little bit of what it's all going to look like for the Mariners' first round pick.
Did you get any flack for having Sloan in the top 100 and no Cjintje?
No, honestly, no,
Okay.
which was cool. Because I mean, Sloan's 3 years younger. What I like about
Right.
Cjintje, why I'm excited about Cjintje, is this guy hasn't been pitching for long.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of helium there, especially with the way that he can spin it with his right hand. Like he
Right.
gets a ton of ride. He has a feel for an assortment of secondaries. I think the slider is impressive. The curveball is really impressive. He's flashed this change. Like I want him to find the feel for that more consistently because again, righty, if it's near 70% fastball usage, he needs to just keep throwing and get more comfortable with the secondaries and get to a point where he can keep, it's the Bubba Chandler conversation, kind of cutting down on that fastball usage. It's a really good fastball. He's averaging 96.5 with his right arm. So like that's where I just want to see him throwing more as a righty, and I feel like the lefty experiment is actually detracting from his development as a pitcher and being the best guy that he can ultimately be.
Got you. All right, last one is an Instagram question real quick. And this comes to us from Ryan Conchado on Instagram. As a Yankee fan, how excited should I be about the recently drafted pitchers? That's Hess, Cunningham, and Herring. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the Yankees' ability to develop pitchers. They flip-flop Drew Thorpe in a whole bunch of different ways, which was cool. They have other guys. Legrand looks like a top 100 pitcher or top 100 player in minor league baseball right now. Obviously, they're doing really good things right now. But in terms of the recent draft classes, where should people's excitement level be?
I think they should be encouraged. They do go pitching heavy. No doubt about that.
Always, like year over year, they go pitching heavy.
Which I get it because they're turning it into assets, right? Like that's the quickest you can turn a player into an asset.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still fighting for their lives to try to figure out how to get Spencer Jones to hit enough, and it's just not going to happen, I don't think.
Yeah.
I'm working on the Yankees' top prospect list right now, and the arms are very, very encouraging.
Yeah.
And it's a classic, that the pitching development program they do before guys debut, right? And I think Bryce Cunningham's just another example of the success around that, where this is a guy that was very two-pitch heavy out of college, and then you have him now in pro ball in his first pro season. He's going four deep and mixing them all, really, really, I think successfully. I mean, he's still going to throw the fastball 50% of the time, and it's a good one, right? He's getting plus extension, above average carry, and he's filling up the zone at 94. But he's got this changeup that it's night and day from where it was at in college. I mean, he's getting like 18 inches of horizontal. The slider's gotten a little bit better. Then the curveball looks really good. So, like, I'd be very encouraged by what Bryce Cunningham's done. Ben Hess, I'd be a little bit surprised by the command challenges, but he is spinning the heck out of the ball too. And I think you can feel at least somewhat cautiously optimistic that the Yankees can hopefully get him right from a command perspective. And again, they've had the success with that and with those guys. I honestly have to dig a little bit more into Herring, but I would say overall, given how rough the system is, and I mean, this is one of the weaker systems in Major League Baseball, that's probably the quickest way to we're talking about a team that's going to try to be buyers or either fast track an arm, and it's generally going to be the buyer's side of thing.
Right.
I think you got to feel pretty good about how they did in this draft because it wasn't like it was loaded with college arms after Yasavage, right? It like Cjintje, Yasavage, like those guys were all off the board. You had to get a little bit creative there, and I think they did with several arms.
Who's your favorite of that draft class?
Cunningham. I really like him. He's going to be the number 3 prospect in the Yankees update. I think he's been really impressive. He's hurt right now, and they haven't said what it is. Classic. But it's 7-day IL, so hopefully it's nothing serious.
Yeah.
But I also think like when you look at Herring too, it's crafty, but it's 89 to 91. But he's a lefty and kind of gets a little bit of a sneaky ride there, so we'll see. Cunningham, I think, is comfortably the best out of that class, though, and I think he's going to keep separating himself further and further. I think he's closer to Legrand than he is to Ben Hess at this point.
Interesting. Okay, cool. That's what we got, man. That's our mailbag.
Yeah, you got what series finale? Or no, how does that work for you?
Middle game. We had a 2-hour, 15-minute delay yesterday in the bottom of the 4th. So the final out was recorded, I think, at 1 a.m. Like we were on a 1:30 bus, and right back here because it's 47's birthday. So they decided to move this game up from Saturday night to a little 105 first pitch. So really fun stuff, riveting stuff. But yeah, we hit the air in about 7 minutes.
All right, well, enjoy, man. James Wood's putting on a show. I know that's been pretty cool to see. But so did Agustin Ramirez with a pair of nukes.
It was cool. It was cool because in the third inning, Augustine hit a ball 447 feet, and then in the fourth inning, James Wood hit a ball 451 feet. It was really cool to watch both those guys do their thing.
It's fun with the young players starting to make an impact for both these teams. So I'm excited to check in after this early one that got moved up for you guys. But I hope everybody enjoyed the mailbag. And if you're on YouTube, weren't thrown off too much by the shift in angles here. But
what if someone turned it off because it was so drastic?
I don't like this angle.
I can't do this new setting anymore. Time to leave.
You know what? I'd understand. Next week, we got some fun episodes as well. We may check in on another team top prospect list. We're going to do a heat sheet check-in. Definitely a lot to look at there. And I want to talk a little College World Series and the takeaways there. But I know, as we talked about earlier in this episode, you and I need to do a check-in on guys getting caught up. We got to talk Roman Anthony. We got to talk Mizorowski. That outing was insane. And fortunately, that sprained ankle or whatever is nothing serious. And he's going to be right back for the next start. So I think we'll have another Mizorowski start potentially to break down. So sample size of 2, and it's going to be really fun to do that.
Love it.
All right. I hope everybody enjoys the College World Series. We'll talk about that too, because getting some early looks at, not early, but getting some looks at these draft guys has been pretty fun as well.
Aloy. I'm all about that kid Aloy at Arkansas. Be fun.
And Arquette has been fun to watch. And then there was some surprising disappointments that I'm going to get into, but also the pitching matchup of Dax Whitney and Patrick Forbes was insane. And
Forbes is crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And Whitney's freshman, Oregon State, was disgusting. We'll talk about all that stuff next week as well. Hope everybody has a great weekend. And I'll be talking about it in the Discord if you want to join. That link's in the episode description. We'll talk to you next week.